Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Healing Connections podcast. I'm your host, Emmy Vadnais, and today we have the great pleasure to speak with Scarlett V Clark about success through failure. And I just read her fabulous book, The Smart Girl's Handbook, and I am just so thrilled to talk with you today, Scarlett, to learn a bit about your journey and to share how you've overcome challenges to reach the success and go after your dreams. Welcome, Scarlett.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Would you mind just sharing a little bit about your background and how you came to create the Smart Girls Tribe?
Of course. So I desperately, when I was growing up, wanted to be a writer. I really wanted to either be a journalist or an author, but I knew I wanted to write. When I was a teenager, I started applying for so many different internships, and I was being accepted by them for the summer, obviously in between school years and university years. But I remember there was one particular summer I said to my mum, I don't know how I can go and work for these magazines when we're not aligned. I don't follow the same ethos as them. I mean, even that very day, I had gone to the supermarket and I saw a magazine and it said, how to make him want you, how to make him hot. And I just thought, I don't know how I can go into these magazines and start writing about similar topics. So I had a long conversation with my mum because I grew up in rural Italy. So it was actually there that I had the idea, if you like. And I thought, you know what, someone needs to change the system. Someone needs to do something. And then I realized I am someone. I am somebody who can take a stand and take action. So that's how it came about. On day one, when I decided to launch it, again, being in rural Italy, I didn't have an internet connection. I didn't have a phone connection. I actually went up to my local Wi-Fi hotspot and I sent an email to my entire contact list asking if someone knew someone who maybe knew someone who could help me build and develop a website. So Smart Girl Tribe started as a digital magazine. And we really started focusing on mental health and personal stories as well, at a time that no other outlet, especially online, was doing so. We were talking about social issues affecting women worldwide, our careers, travel, etc. And it just really snowballed from there. So now I obviously have the best-selling book, The Smart Girl's Handbook, our top-rated podcast, the Smart Girl Tribe podcast, and I have worked with UN Women, Women for Women International, He for She alongside Emma Watson, the Houses of Parliament, and of course 50-50, because I'm a huge advocate and champion for women in politics, because I don't think they're being as represented as they should be. So that's really where it's began and where I find myself today.
Wow, just phenomenal. And when I was reading your book, what really struck me was that I loved your vulnerability in your book, by the way. I loved how you shared challenging times that you've experienced. And could you share maybe a challenge you've experienced? Because I think that what happens in life for people is that maybe listening to you right now, they might think, oh, well, she's just special. She was just meant to do this, and I could never accomplish something like that. And if somebody sets out to do that, they might come up against some obstacles and quit or feel frustrated or start, letting the inner critic take over. So could you share maybe one of the challenges or failures, I'll put in quotes, and I'd love to talk a little bit more about the word failure, that you've encountered and how you overcame it to accomplish so much?
So I would say probably my greatest failing, if you like, or failure, is when I graduated, I knew Smart Girl Tribe could become something. I knew it could be a fully fledged business, yet everyone was around me told me that it wouldn't be able to be anything more than a hobby, something on the side, a side hustle. I would genuinely love nothing more to sit here and say I didn't listen, but I did. I listened to everyone and their mother telling me that it wouldn't become something. So I graduated and I pursued, and I was accepted at a very prestigious PR company. So I was organizing events in London for Louis Vuitton, Tiffany's, lots of different champagne brands. And about 3 weeks, 2 hours, maybe 43 minutes in, I quit. I said I just couldn't do this anymore, because I had been given a huge project. I was standing in the middle of a hotel and I had organized this event, and I was looking to my right, there was crowds, swarms of paparazzi. Looking to my left, Hollywood celebrities were being flown in. I was being offered promotion. I was being offered more money. And I thought, I am miserable. This isn't in alignment with who I truly am. And that was the first time that I had to look at society's expectations and everyone else's expectations around me and say, you know what, I'm out. This isn't for me. I actually went home and I booked a one-way flight ticket to New York. I didn't have any money still. I have to say that when I started, I didn't have any financial backing. I actually had 100 reasons telling me not to pursue this idea, but I did for the one that I truly in my core felt that it was needed, and that women in particular, young women especially, needed this hub to be focusing on issues that matter. So that was really my biggest failure, if you like. Ironically, my biggest failure is called Smart Girl Tribe, because it's the first time that I looked at the societal expectations and pressures and I said, you know what, this isn't for me. The path I'm currently on isn't in alignment with who I truly am. The greatest challenge, I would have to say, is I grew up in Italy, as I've mentioned a couple of times, in rural Italy. And I was in a very small school, if you like. I mean, it was huge in the way that the building was, but in my class, we were 12, including me, whereas in the UK, you tend to be about 30, 32 in one class. I was social chair. I had a very, very tight-knit group of friends. I was very social. I was incredibly happy. I really wanted, though, to go to British university. So I came back to be able to sit the exams to go to my first choice university. And that was the biggest challenge of my life, just coming back and trying to fit in. I was mocked and bullied for being academic. My nickname became Granger. I was really torn apart, and 100%, I always say to people, you know, God was just throwing me plot lines, because it just felt at the time, it was really where my panic attacks developed. I developed anxiety very severely during that time. I didn't fit at all. I really, really stood out, and it was a huge struggle. But again, I honestly, truly believe that I wouldn't necessarily be where I am today had I not gone through that experience.
Wow. So you came from rural Italy, because hearing you speak, looking at, how you're presenting yourself, it looks like you're a Londoner all the way, and, very cosmopolitan. And you had people actually telling you that it wouldn't amount to anything. You were literally bullied, teased, made fun of. And what do you think accounts for your perseverance of continuing forward? Because you could have easily given up at any moment.
It was one of those things that at the time when I came back and I was really struggling, when I look back in hindsight, I had no idea how I honestly got through it, because it was horrible. And one, I couldn't really say it's a regret, but I do wish at the time I had been more honest with the people I was close to, because I did have a few conversations and I did open up to people about how much I was struggling during that time, because I was being mocked and bullied quite severely, and even on social media as well at the time. But I didn't really speak up to, especially to the extent I wish I did. Of course, family members of mine, they knew what was going on and we came up with solutions, and I managed it very, very well. But to be honest, it was just my determination to go to my university. That's what I had in the back of my mind. That was my mission. That's what I wanted to pursue. That's honestly why I felt I had come back to England. So because of that, I just kept that at the forefront of my mind. And that's honestly what got me through.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you were very in alignment with your own passion and determination.
Yes, I mean, it was a very odd time, because when I look back, I was head of the international committee. I was part of, the charity committee. I was the main part in the school play and things like this. So from an outsider's point of view, I was just excelling in all of these different arenas, when actually it was just because I wanted an escape. I wanted to get out of that school environment. So I was finding all of these different passions, if you like. But I would say my determination or perseverance, as you so eloquently put it, is what got me through that time. I just kept thinking of that. But then when I built Smart Girl Tribe, that's when I found my community, because I started it on the internet. The community was thriving and I was connecting with young women from all over the world. So very, very quickly, I was able to find my people. So I would say to anybody who's maybe watching or listening to this, if you haven't found your tribe yet, it doesn't mean that they're not out there. It just means you haven't found them yet. I have pockets of friends all over the world. I have lived in New York. I moved very briefly over to Barcelona and Dublin. Of course, I've been in London as well, and I grew up in Italy. So you can find tribes, small tribes, wherever you wish. But if you are struggling, of course, they are on the internet as well.
Mm. Oh, so what does success mean to you?
Living authentically, I would have to say, for me, I have never been able to measure success by money, these superficial metrics, if you like. For me, it has always been about living authentically, living true to who I am, which Smart Girl Tribe has hugely helped me achieve, if you like. But for me, success has always been living authentically. If I were to look at somebody, I often say, oh my gosh, she's so successful. And people think that's odd. And it's because for me, I feel that people who are living confidently and true to who they are, that's a true representation of success.
Mm-hmm. And then through that success, other things may follow, other comforts, other supports. And would you say that through that process, you other people kind of came out of the woodwork to support you, or did you find that there was a ripple effect in your life by living authentically that supported you?
Absolutely. So when I started Smart Girl Tribe, and I had built an entire magazine from a dorm room that was focusing on the issues that I wanted to discuss. So again, mental health, careers, social issues affecting women, and more content that I was putting out there, and the more authentic my voice was and the content was, the more people from around the world started connecting with me and reaching out to me. And I truly believe that's why certain opportunities came in to my life at certain points in time, because I was living authentically and true to who I am and my core mission as well. I would say I've always defined success by living or as authentically as I can, but by also going to bed knowing I've had a positive impact on the world. So by doing so, it was through that, and through that work, I was able to meet more activists and more young women who were aligned and who were on board with my mission, if you like.
And how do you serve the Smart Girls community? What exactly is it that you are? So you mentioned a little bit of helping people with mental health issues, with social issues. Can you share a little bit more about that and what the effect is you're seeing from all of your great efforts?
Of course. So, my penultimate event prior to the pandemic, I was invited to speak at the UK's largest careers and universities fair. And I was very excited about it. And I was talking to thousands and thousands of young people who were there with their parents as well. And after one of my talks, because it was a 3-day event and we all had different slots. So I was talking for 3 days. And after one in particular, a woman approached me, a mother with her 22-year-old daughter. And she said to me, Scarlett, for the past 2 years, my daughter has told me every day that she wants to take her own life. But today's the first day that she hasn't wanted to because of something you have said. So whenever I'm not feeling motivated or I'm not feeling focused or I'm having a bad day, I picture all of the faces of those young women who I have helped, who have emailed me or messaged me or sent me Instagram videos. And it's funny because people do send me social media videos and then I reply and they think, they just say to me, I didn't think you would reply. And I say, of course, because I really do see it as one community. So for me, mental health has always been an important issue, especially because 1 in 3 people worldwide suffer from anxiety. I happen to be one of them. If you take the book, the Smart Girls Handbook, it's really broken down into the themes that I focus on when it comes to my work. So bullying, making friends, finding your purpose, speaking your truth, coping with failure, living beyond fear, then of course anxiety, self-care, my 10 principles to success. I throw that in there as well because I built a business when I was 19, so just a teenager. And then, of course, having a positive impact and being an activist as well. So the book's really divided into all of the themes that I personally, or my work, I should say, focuses on. But it really began because I knew that, or I have always felt that women in particular are born as free balls of energy and love, but then they are slammed with societal expectations and pressures. And there are institutions in place to keep women in boxes, to have them shrink themselves, to not claim their power back. And I'll give an example, Emmy. So, what would the world look like if we took the beauty industry, if suddenly every woman in the world decided that she loved herself unconditionally and she was infinitely enough? There would be an economic crisis. There would be an economic collapse. And you would find a lot of middle-aged men running around wondering what on earth has happened with the stock market. So it's things like this. There are things in place to keep women people pleasing, living according to other people's expectations, if you like, living the life they think they should. So knowing that, I always wanted to provide women a safe space for them to empower themselves and live authentically and as fearlessly, if you like, as they can.
Mm, definitely so needed for sure. And you mentioned that you have dealt with anxiety. So how have you coped or managed while building up this fabulous support for women around the world?
So when it comes to anxiety, of course, this is such a dear topic to me. I love talking about anxiety because so many people struggle with it. And I have come up with a few methods which I talk about extensively in the book. One of them happens to be my 5 cents rule. So I think a lot of content out there, articles, podcast episodes, they really focus on what to do if you're having a panic attack. Whereas for me, I have always wanted to focus on what to do to prevent a panic attack when you start having those anxious feelings, when they begin bubbling up. And one thing that I do is I focus on my 5 senses. So when I'm feeling very anxious, I ask myself, okay, what can I hear? What can I see? What can I touch? Because that immediately detaches or takes me out of the current situation I'm in. It calms me down and it allows me almost to completely distract myself. That's probably one of the most effective methods, if you like, that I have found that really helps me manage my anxiety.
Hmm. Fantastic. Have you found that thank you for those tips, by the way. And I love how you share about some of your experiences. One that really struck me was on a ferry ride, I think in Italy, and how you used breathing. I think you said it was like a
Yeah.
4-hour ride. And that
Yeah.
really
So
struck me, a very, very potent story there.
when I was in Greece, I was island hopping, and it was something I had always wanted to do. It was my bucket list thing. And I had to take a ferry, and I think it was like a 4.5 hour journey. And I have struggled with travel sickness, but never to this extent before, ever. It was excruciating. It was really, really hard. I was very physically sick. You could see it in my face. When I arrived, I had somebody pick me up and they actually said that I was green and they knew that not to talk to me. It was something I really struggled with. And during that time, something that I did was I really focused on my breathing. And I never knew that breathing could be such a powerful tool. But this is something actually that I have available on our website. So at smartgirltribe.com, I've put together the Smart Girls Handbook. And I have included, I call them meditations, because I love meditations, and especially ones that follow your breathing through to help others when they are in stressful moments, if you like. I mean, that was something I couldn't have predicted it. It wasn't necessarily an anxious moment. I wasn't necessarily worried, but I did have to focus on my breathing to calm me down.
Hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that. And since you have accomplished so much and inspired and helped so many people, for you, have you found that has that helped your anxiety? Because I think sometimes, I really ponder, it seems like we're almost in a crisis with anxiety and depression. I think we are actually at an epidemic with it around the world, perhaps. And I think that sometimes people might be experiencing those symptoms. I mean, there's various reasons, but one of the reasons might be that people are not living authentically. And so I'm wondering, has your anxiety changed at all since you've been on this journey?
Has it changed? It's probably got worse.
Oh, well, then my theory goes out the window.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure for so many other people, I would say it's got better in the way that I have managed it. But I would say, it comes back to that saying, new levels, new devils, because now the opportunities are greater. So I'm a female empowerment expert for Harvard University, and speaking there at their largest conference, I was full of anxiety. It's just a completely different platform. So I would say the anxiety is greater because there is more expected from you. The opportunities are greater, the platforms are larger, your mission is being followed a lot more intently. So I personally would say that the anxiety, looking at it that way, is probably greater. But how I managed it now, I don't suffer from panic attacks. I haven't had a panic attack in a few years now because of the methods that I share in the book, because I wanted this content to be accessible to everyone, because it took me years to get there. However, I personally have found that anxiety comes from fear of not being able to control the future necessarily, which for me, when I was younger, my anxiety was really driven by that, because I found myself not enjoying where I was in England, not surrounded by authentic people, and I struggled. So it really was this fear of the future of, if I don't get these grades to go to my first choice university, then I could potentially be here again, or I could be stuck in this place surrounded by these people. So that's where my anxiety really started. So I would say the anxiety is greater now because of the opportunities, and because I'm probably followed a lot more. And it's things, as I'm sure you can relate to, double features in, international press and national press as well, domestic press, and being on the radio and live television and things like this. There's a lot more anxiety there, but I have managed it, or I do manage it a lot better than I ever have done before, which has meant that I haven't had a panic attack in a few years, couple of years. Yeah, I would say, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's significant. And that's super inspiring, I think, for people who are listening. And you're right. I mean, ultimately, anxiety is really connected to fear. But I also think that societally, there's a lot of discord going on. And I think that can create feelings of disharmony as well for people. So I love how you have given us some examples here today that can help with that, and what a great inspiration you are. And even though you are having more and more demands on yourself, you are managing it really well. So applause to you. So you've defined success as living authentically. How would you define what failure is? And I think this is a really interesting word.
No, of course. So I personally see failure as data acquisition. So the information necessary for you to become the person that you are destined to be. I personally don't really believe in failure. I think there are just lessons to be learned. And I would honestly say, when you see people and they seem to be on a mountaintop of success, I say they're not on a mountaintop of success, they're on a mountaintop of failures, because it's at a peak. So yes, you may be here at the top, however, you are standing on a mountain of failures. I think you can only fail if you really give up. That's something that I promised myself at the very beginning. I said to myself, no matter what Smart Girl Tribe looks like, no matter how it evolves or doesn't evolve, even if it only stays as this digital magazine, which, at the very, very beginning, only a few people were really reading, then that would be okay for me. So I think the only failing is if you give up on yourself, if you give in. But outside of that, I personally see it as data acquisition, and everyone is going to fail, of course. And I think if you live so in the lines of life, afraid to fail, then you fail by default. That's personally what I believe. I think it's a chance to use past experiences to inform the present, to beautifully impact the future if you allow it.
Oh, well said. Yeah, because I think that people can have what they consider a failure happen and perseverate on it and get stuck there. So what would you say to somebody who feels like they're a failure or have failed to inspire them to keep them going?
I would personally recommend finding a mentor, find somebody who maybe has more experience, possibly more wisdom than you, who can help guide you. And then I would say take whatever it is that you believe you have failed at and Google research someone, perhaps well known, who has an autobiography or has had a book written about them, and then go to a bookstore and read their story and how they overcame it and how they use that failure to push them forward. Those would be my two top tips.
Those are great suggestions. Yeah, because really a failure, like you said, they're really learning opportunities, don't you think?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What to do, what not to do, how to do things better in the future.
Yeah. I think it's incredibly hard. I think because when you fail, I think it's really hard to admit it, not only to others, but to yourself as well. I think there is a lot of negative terminology that surrounds that term failure. I mean, if your heart stops working, we call it heart failure. If, I have read many different articles about women who haven't been able to conceive and who have had to turn to IVF, and if it hasn't worked out, you say they've failed. And I wouldn't deem those as failures. So I think there's a lot of negative conditioning, if you like, that surrounds that term, where actually, if we just saw it as very linear as we do success, we see success as this kind of pure thing, but it's actually not. It is sprinkled with ebbs and flows. And I think if we approach failure in exactly the same way, that sometimes things do work out and sometimes they don't, I think people wouldn't struggle with it so much and would be able to seek help and find a mentor or even talk to those closest to them.
Hmm. Right, right. And sometimes one door closes and another one opens. And
Mhm.
this is just, part of life. Certainly in my experience, that's been something that I've noticed, is that when I've tried certain things and it hasn't worked out, usually something better happens. And now it might take a little bit for that to develop. But if you keep at it, in my experience, usually something better will come from it. So, how do you think failure, people's perception of what failure is, might affect somebody's self-esteem and their ability to achieve their life goals?
I think it can massively affect it because I think you have a choice. You can either use it to use your failure um, to hold you back or to push you forward. You can use it to help or to hinder you. If you took a very analytical approach and you looked at your failing and you analyzed it and you tore it apart and you would look at, okay, into it, what did go right? What didn't necessarily go right, what could go better next time? I think if everyone took that approach, it would help them a lot more. But absolutely, I think it hugely affects people's self-esteem because they don't want to try again. However, you have to take the attitude, if you saw a toddler learning to walk or learning to run and they fell over, you don't sit there and say, well, you failed, you shouldn't try that again. You really should. You shouldn't learn to walk. I mean, look how bad you are. You fell at your first, third, 10th attempt. You don't do that. You clap and you cheer and you say, try again, give it another go. And I still don't understand why we talk to young children how so differently to how we talk to ourselves. Not necessarily, I can understand why you necessarily might not cheer on your best friend in that same way as you would a toddler, because of course it could come across as very patronizing and condescending. But hug yourself from time to time, mentally, emotionally. Give yourself a pat on the back. Don't beat yourself up. We have too many people out there who are stopping. I always say the richest place in the world is the graveyard, because it's where the majority of dreams go to die. Because so many people are people pleasing, or they're not living authentically, or they fail and they give up, to the point that that fantastic, life changing, world shaking dream or goal was never put out in the world. What would have happened if Albert Einstein had given up, or Jane Austen had given up, or all of these extraordinary people, or J.K. Rowling or Steve Jobs, what would the world look like then? You know, we look at them now and we praise them and we celebrate them because we have seen the outcome. You need to have that same attitude when it comes to yourself. Just because you can't see the success now doesn't mean you never will.
Mm, very inspiring. So, how can one tame the inner critic? Because we all have that voice inside of us that can criticize us, keep us down, tell us, well, you know, you're just not cut out to do this, or why are you putting yourself through this, or you're stupid, or, you know, not smart enough, not good looking enough, not whatever enough to be able to persevere. What do you think would help that taming that inner critic?
I personally, Emmy, have personalized my inner mean girl. We all have one, that inner voice, that voice inside our heads that says we're not good enough, we're not talented enough, funny enough, pretty enough. I have personalized my inner mean girl. So, being called Scarlett, I have named my inner mean girl Sheila. So, whenever I hear that inner voice, I say, "Oh, shut up, Sheila." And I literally imagine shutting the door on her. I have completely detached myself from her. It's a little bit like that Lizzie McGuire cartoon. She has that small Lizzie who's following her around, and you know, the voice inside her head. You have to treat it like that. You have to detach yourself from your inner voice. I have done so by personalizing her. I talk to myself positively, which is incredibly hard. And I explore this in the book as well. You know, the very first reflection you see of yourself every morning, or each morning, I should say, you should say something kind to yourself. Because if your best friend were there, you wouldn't talk to her or to him how you talk to yourself. So why are you talking to yourself in that way? And especially when it comes to body image as well, the next time, to anyone who's listening or watching this, the next time you look in the mirror and you're tearing yourself up, you're beating yourself up, really going in and you're saying, oh, you know, I wish my tummy was flatter. That's the very tummy that, if you choose, could carry a baby. Or if you're looking at your legs thinking they're not toned enough, or in my case, being 5'1", long enough, then those are the very legs, you need to see this and consider it, that could get you to run a marathon. If you're looking at your arms thinking they're not toned, those are the very arms that could get you to swim a mile. So you need to change how you're approaching yourself and fill yourself up with positive affirmations. That's a recommendation of mine.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Talking to yourself like you might talk to your own best friend, and silencing the part of you that is unhelpful. That's not cheering you on. So you've spoken with so many people over the years. What do you find is the biggest barrier that people come up against when trying to be successful, whether they're trying to be a good student, a good parent, a professional, to have good health, or any part of their life they want to be successful in? What is the greatest barrier that you found, and how can people overcome that?
I would probably say either people pleasing or something that I call comparisonitis. So when I started Smart Girl Tribe about 6 months in, and we had already had or achieved some success, there were two websites in the UK that were career orientated, and they seemed to be doing very, very well. They had greater followings than us. They seemed to be going to all of the fancy places, the fashion week and things like this. So much so, I went into my team after 6 months and I said, that's it. I've got the secret. We need to become more career orientated. So we did the website, and it lasted only a couple of weeks because we saw our readers plummet. We saw our statistics plummet. And that was such a true form of comparisonitis. So, of course, we did this 360. We went back to the drawing board. We went back to our core mission. We started focusing on our community, which started to thrive again, if you like. And I have never looked back since, because I had that experience, which I personally think I was very blessed to have gone through that, and to really realize that you can't compare yourself to someone else, because everyone has their own individual path. And I should say, those two websites, they no longer exist today. So at all, in any form. And I know because I know the founders of them now, because we have found ourselves in the same circles. So, knowing all of this, I would say it's very, very, very easy to compare yourself, especially as a woman. And because I come back to this, we are conditioned to have a checklist. For instance, look like this, don't be too this, be funny, but not funnier than one of the guys. Be skinny, but not too skinny, or be curvy, but don't be fat. Be athletic, but again, not as athletic as one of the boys. Be smart, but not a geek. All things like this. We are given a checklist, which, in my opinion, men aren't to the same degree at all. And there are, as I come back to, institutions in place to keep us thinking that we're not enough, because the economy, if you like, is just one part of the patriarchal society that benefits from women not thinking that they are enough. So I would say comparisonitis, absolutely. You have to know that no matter who you are, no matter who you're comparing yourself to, they are comparing themselves to someone else as well. And that includes those really leggy Victoria's Secret models. And you also have to remember there is someone who has seen you in your life, or who has known you, who has also compared themselves to you, and who has wanted something that you have, or a trait, a characteristic that you have as well. You might not believe that, but I promise it's true. So I would say comparisonitis, and one of the toughest things is we don't only have comparisonitis in life, but also a lot now because of social media. We have this tendency to show the best and hide the rest. No one is putting up their bad days. Everyone is putting on filters, etc., etc. It goes on and on and on. So I'd say comparisonitis is a big one, and then people pleasing is another big one. No matter if it's your sibling or your partner or your parents or your friend, a lot of people, because I've been to schools, universities, and businesses. I have counseled a lot of business owners as well, and one of the primary struggles that people tend to go through is they're trying to please people around them, even if it's those mean girls in high school. And I can completely understand that. I can, but you really have to ask yourself why. What are you gaining from this? What are you doing to yourself by trying to make them happy, by trying to show them a version of you that may not be the authentic and true you? And I would say, especially for women, you need to claim your power back. But I would say those tend to be the two primary struggles in my experience.
Mm-hmm. And how can women claim their power back?
I would say, so a few examples that I have given, so positive affirmations. And I mean, I do talk about this in my book, and I don't really like to repeat advice, but one thing I would say is think of 3 ways that you would describe the best version of yourself. 3 adjectives. For me, my primary value is grace. No matter what, I always try and be the most gracious and graceful version of me as I can. So I use doors as a trigger. So whenever I open a door to my home, door to my office, door to my car, I always ask myself, how would the most gracious and graceful version of me go into this new environment or these new surroundings? The reason why I said 3 adjectives is because you can, when you put an alarm on in the morning, you can type out those 3 adjectives. So when your alarm comes up, you see them straight away. So for me, it would be probably gracious, alive, and kind. Those would probably be my 3 adjectives. The best version of me, the best Scarlett I could possibly be. That's how I would describe her. I could put that on my alarm and see it every single day. So I would say surrounding yourself with positive affirmations, or as I like to call them, positive triggers. So like I said, I use a door. Also by journaling. I think journal so you can monitor how you're talking to yourself or how you're writing about yourself, because then go back every so often through those pages and ask yourself, if you were reading your best friend or your sisters or your mum's partners, whoever, if you were reading their diary and this is what they had written about themselves, what would you say to them? Would you be hugging them? Would you be saying, don't beat yourself up so much, you're doing beautifully? those would probably be my biggest pieces of advice that I would say, just quite simple ones. So 3 adjectives, put them on your alarm. Maybe use doors as a trigger. It doesn't have to be a door. Maybe every time someone sends you a text and you hear that ping, you check in with yourself. How would the best version of me reply to this message? Perhaps every time someone calls your name, you think, okay, every time someone calls my name, I'm going to use that as a trigger to again check in with myself, ask how would the best version of me reply to this person? Because the more you ask yourself, how would the best, in my case, most graceful, but it looks different for everybody, just consider your primary values, which again is another chapter I talk about. And I do talk about all of these things, I talk about extensively. It may seem like I'm flipping through them quite quickly, but I'm very conscious of time and I just want to get all of this information out there.
We want people to read your book.
Listeners. Just for your listeners.
It's a great read, by the way. It's a quick read. I mean, it's truly a page turner. So I think people will enjoy it.
I would say those would probably be my best pieces of advice. But another thing that I love that has proven very, very effective over the years is write a letter from your perseverance. So write a letter to yourself with all of the times that you proved yourself wrong. So if you said, you know what, if you were talking to yourself and you said, I'm really not feeling great today because I'm such a failure, I have failed at X, Y, and Z. Write a letter from your perseverance and write a letter from all the times you didn't fail and all the times that you did show up for yourself. That's proven very, very effective. When I share that at my talks and my events, people tend to love that one because it's so different. It's not really the advice you hear every day. So those things I would suggest.
Those are great examples. Yeah, how to keep that toddler walking and standing up and keep going. And self-love and self-compassion and self-acceptance are I think themes you're speaking about. So something that really struck me when I was reading your book and learning a lot more about you that we share in common is that through my journey in my life and also professionally and certainly personally, that things like mind body practices, mind body spirit practices such as meditation, mindfulness, guided imagery have really helped me. And they've also helped strengthen my intuition. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about how that supported you in your life and what that's done for you.
So for me personally, I love meditations. I love meditating. There is an app called 10% Happier. I think that's great. It sends you, you do have to pay, you do have to subscribe to it. But I know a lot of my friends are on board with that too. Otherwise, I love the app Calm. And I have a reminder every day from the Calm app that comes up on my phone that just really reminds me to be loving toward myself, to be kind toward myself. I have already mentioned the meditations that we have on our website as part of the Smart Girls Handbook. But I would say meditation has proven very effective for me. But one thing I love, Emmy, is guided visualization, because I am somebody. So my biggest piece of advice for anybody when it comes to dreams or achieving goals or setting up a business, whatever it may be, even if it's something really, really small, such as managing your mental health, or something really big, such as writing a screenplay, I always say max out your dream, times it by 10. Because when I started, my dream was to set up a digital magazine. I had achieved that by day one. If I had just stopped there, I would have got so bored very, very quickly because there wouldn't have been anything pushing me forward. So you need a very, very strong why. And meditation can help with that. Or, sorry, I should say guided visualization can really help with that. You can just YouTube guided visualizations, and also on Spotify, I know there are a lot available because I have done them, I've completed them. And a lot of the time you just sit there and somebody helps you walk through what you want your life to look like. One thing I'd really recommend, if you don't necessarily like listening to a meditation or a guided visualization, is just take some time for yourself and visualize 3 different episodes in your life, 3 different scenes, if you like, things that you would like to happen. So take maybe 20 minutes. You can set an alarm if you like, or you could even put some classical music on, whatever floats your boat, whatever is your cup of tea. And I would say just try and lie there and try and visualize 3 different scenes, 3 different things that you would like to achieve in your life, because that's guided visualization as well. But that has been exceptionally important to me, because I realized very, very quickly, if I didn't maximize my dream and really think of the impossible, if you reach for the moon and you don't quite reach it, you're there among the stars, but you need to try and push it to be able to go that far. And the only person who can get you there is you. The only difference between where you are now and where you want to be is you. So for me, I'm a huge fan of guided visualization in particular, and also of meditation. I love mood boards. I'm a big, big mood board person. I print out a lot of magazines. I have them in a scrapbook. A lot of my followers now will know that I would love a lake house one day. So I have that. I've designed that in my head. So when I do a guided visualization, I picture the lake house that I'm going to go in. I really get super, super specific. The more specific you can get, the better. But I'm a huge fan of meditation and guided imagery, guided visualization as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of power in that desire, that passion, that feeling, that intention, that attention, really bringing that focus so that you can really manifest what it is that you desire. Well, Scarlett, thank you. You've shared so much with us today. Is there anything else that you want to share with us about what you've created, other ways that you think anything else you think somebody might want to hear around success through failure?
I would say it may look, again, I would like to stress that people are standing on mountaintops of successes, but they're not. They're standing on mountaintops of failures and rejections and setbacks. You, as an entrepreneur, you never have 2 good days in a row. You're always questioning something, you're always being challenged and stretched. And I would say, finally, when it comes to success on any level, I personally would say the secret to success is showing up. And this always surprises people, because I obviously employ people, I take people on, and I say, I don't need the most talented person. I don't even need the most experienced. I don't need the wisest. What I do need is the person who's going to show up, the person who is going to be there earlier than me, the person who's going to stay there later than me, the person who's going to break down with me when it's all going wrong, and the first person to put up their hand. That's really the secret to success. It's the showing up. When I was at university, I went to university in Bath, which is 3.5 hours away from London. I would attend networking events, and I would go back to university all in one day, one evening, even, just because I wanted to talk to that one person at that one networking event. Sometimes there have been PR companies that I have wanted to work with, and I have called them and called them. When I went over to New York at the very, very beginning of my career, I knew exactly what political outlet I wanted to freelance for. So I called the editor every single Monday for 6 weeks in a row, saying, I'm not going away until you pick up the phone to me, in a very eloquent, professional manner. But the difference is I was really showing up. I think a lot of people not only feel entitled and feel that it should happen for them, or that they're deserving of it, but they think the opportunities come to them. That's absolutely not true. So I would say you have to go after everything, maximize your dream, never, never, ever, ever give up, back yourself, I would say, and always be authentic to who you are, because it may seem to you right now, listening or watching this, that you should be an entrepreneur, that you should be. And that's a word that I hate, should, because the truth is, if we all leaned into who we authentically are, our core missions, the world would look completely differently. There wouldn't be war. There wouldn't be fighting and there wouldn't be disputes in the way that there are in all of these different areas in the world, or arenas, I should say. The world would look entirely different. So I would say absolutely ditch that word should from your vocabulary, but enjoy the ride, because life is incredibly short and it's also incredibly long. So simultaneously, so I would say that, and then never measure yourself against someone else's definition of enough. Those would be my parting words.
Great advice. And finally, a question I like to ask my guests are, what does God or spirituality mean to you?
I would say personally that for me, growing up in Italy, of course, spirituality and religion, they were both huge influences on me in my life. It's still a topic that I'm navigating today. I think it's very important to never stop in any area of life, to never stop questioning, to never stop challenging, to always be exploring, learning, and surrounding yourself by different people from different backgrounds with different points of view. I would say that you have to believe in something. You have to anyone, you have to have faith in the world. You have to truly believe to your core that there is a reason why you are here, because there is. I personally don't believe in coincidence. I love that saying that coincidence is God's way of staying anonymous, but you can of course substitute that with the universe or Mother Divine, but you have to have faith. You have to believe in something. I think it's very important, even if you don't have all of the answers, even if it's a topic that you too are navigating for the next 20 years. I would say to anyone who isn't quite there, just start, just read an article or listen to a podcast episode, but having a faith, I think, is very important. Even if you personally can't relate to having a religious belief, having a faith, knowing that the universe is backing you, I think is very important.
Beautiful. And how can people find you or get in touch with you and learn more about your fabulous book, and to subscribe to your magazine? Is it a free magazine, or is it a paid subscription? How do people access it?
No, it's completely free. It's available to all. It's at smartgirltribe.com. We're Smart Girl Tribe on everything, but predominantly Instagram, or you can come and find me, Scarlett_Victoria_Clark. The podcast, the Smart Girl Tribe podcast, is available everywhere, including Spotify, iTunes, and Podbean. And then, of course, our best-selling book, The Smart Girl's Handbook, is available everywhere as well, wherever you get your books, all over the world as well. But I know that it includes Barnes and Noble, Target, Chapters, and of course, Amazon.
Wonderful. Scarlett, thank you so much for sharing and inspiring and helping so many people to be in love with themselves, live authentically, and recognize that they can continue to rise above what they might perceive as failure, being a failure, whether you identify as a man or a woman. And so we can all live more joyful, authentic lives.
Thank you so much for having me, Emmy. Thank you so much for cultivating such a safe space to have this conversation. So thank you.
My pleasure. And thank you all for joining us today, and be well until next time. Bye for now.